aim to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. And
Hello,
joining me now is Ralph. Hello, Ralph.
Hello, I'm Ralph Handel-Temper from your EBC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. 75 more recoveries have been reported among police personnel. Singapore will allow entry to travelers from Vietnam and Australia, excluding its coronavirus hotspot, Victoria State, from October 8. And space-starved Singapore is seeing a growing number of rooftop farms as part of a drive to produce more food locally and reduce a heavy reliance on imports. "75 more recoveries have been reported among police personnel. The Philippine National Police said with 75 new recoveries, the recovery tally rose to 4,784. 61 COVID-19 cases pushed the tally to 5,990. Of these, 1,189 were active. There were no additional COVID-19 deaths, which means the death toll remains at 17. PNP Chief Camilio Cascolan has said that policemen on modified enhanced community quarantine and enhanced community quarantine duty were entitled to COVID-19 hazard pay. The police remain as one of the country's frontliners amid the COVID-19 pandemic as they man quarantine checkpoints and ensure peace and order.
Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS, reported that a magnitude 5.3 earthquake jolted Surigao del Sur early Thursday morning. The tectonic quake struck 63 kilometers northeast of the municipality of Bayabas at around 6:10 in the morning. It had a depth of 15 kilometers. The earthquake is an aftershock of the magnitude 5.7 quake that hit the same epicenter last September 21, according to PHIVOLCS. Intensity 4 was felt in Bayabas, while instrumental intensity 1 was recorded in Surigao City. Reported intensity is a traditional way of knowing the intensity based on reports of people who felt the earthquake. Instrumental intensity, on the other hand, is being measured by intensity meter that measures ground acceleration, PHIVOLCS Director Renato Solidum Jr. explained. Meanwhile, PHIVOLCS said no damages and aftershocks are expected from the magnitude 5.3 quake. Solidum earlier said intensity 5 is not damaging yet on PHIVOLCS scale. Damage starts at intensity 6.
And staying in the Philippines, Justice Undersecretary Mark Perete has submitted his resignation from the Department of Justice. In a brief statement, Perete, an undersecretary, said he decided to submit the resignation effective yesterday due to serious reasons after, quote, much thought. He did not elaborate. Perete will, in effect, relinquish his post as DOJ spokesperson should the resignation be accepted. He was appointed by President Duterte as Undersecretary in July 2018. In November 2018, he was named as the Justice spokesperson. Perete was mainly DOJ's Undersecretary for Immigration. He is also part of the Administrative Order 35 Task Force, a special investigative team that looks into politically motivated killings.
Singapore Airlines said it had scrapped plans for flights to nowhere, aimed at boosting its coronavirus-hit finances after an outcry over the environmental impacts. With the aviation industry in deep crisis, several carriers, including in Australia, Japan, and Taiwan, have been offering short flights that start and end at the same airport to raise cash. They are designed for travel-starved people keen to fly at a time of virus-related restrictions and have proved surprisingly popular. But Singapore's flag carrier, which has grounded nearly all its planes and caught thousands of jobs, said it had ditched the idea following a review. The carrier has come up with alternative ideas to raise revenue, including offering customers tours of aircraft and offering them the chance to dine inside an Airbus A380, the world's biggest commercial airliner. Environmental activists had voiced opposition to Singapore Airlines launching flights to nowhere, with group Singapore Climate Rally saying they would encourage carbon-intensive travel for no good reason. The airline said earlier this month it was cutting about 4,300 jobs, or 20% of its workforce, the latest carrier to make massive layoffs. The International Air Transport Association estimates that airlines operating in the Asia-Pacific region stand to lose a combined $27.8 billion this year. The group also forecasts that global air traffic is unlikely to return to pre-coronavirus levels until at least 2024.
All right. Speaking at the UN Assembly's annual debate via a pre-recorded video message, Minister Yu Kiao Tin Sui invited the government of Bangladesh to show its genuine political will to cooperate by strictly adhering to the terms of the signed agreements. The minister informed the Assembly that while bilateral repatriation had not yet started, more than 350 displaced persons from camps in Cox's Bazar had returned to Myanmar's Rakhine State on their own volition through unofficial channels. Let's listen in.
The entire world is waging war. We want to be good neighbors with Bangladesh, bound in a zero-tolerance policy towards terrorism, not merely in words, but in deeds. By so doing, we will be upholding the national interests, not just of our two countries, but the region as a whole. Both the terrorist group ARSA and the terrorist insurgent group AA have used Bangladeshi territory as a sanctuary. Efforts to prevent ARSA and its supporters in the camps of Cox's Bazar from hampering the bilateral repatriation process must be enhanced, as such activities pose a risk to both Bangladesh and Myanmar. Demonizing fellow member states of the United Nations by using inadequately quality control information foster ill feeling between countries and people, which is a harbinger of hatred and conflict. This would weaken the principal objective for peace on which the UN Charter is based. We ask only for fair treatment from the international community. It is our appeal to member states to examine the negative narratives on Myanmar carefully and impartially before drawing their independent conclusion.
Mr. Yu Kiao Tin Sui said Myanmar shares concern over the allegations of human rights violations in Rakhine State and takes them seriously. He said his country made significant progress towards achieving accountability, adding that Myanmar should be given time, space, and respect for its domestic accountability processes. Now, Singapore will allow entry to travelers from Vietnam and Australia, including its coronavirus hotspot, Victoria State, and this will start on October 8. The city-state is cautious in reopening its borders after a virus closure to help revive its airport. It is a key regional aviation hub. The Aviation Authority has said there is a low risk of virus importation from the two countries. Now, travelers must undergo a virus swab test upon arrival, travel on direct flights without transit, and download a mobile app for contact tracing. Transport Minister Ong Ye Kung said in a Facebook post that with each step of safe opening our borders, we start to rebuild the bridges and resuscitate Changi Airport. Singapore last month welcomed visitors from Brunei and New Zealand. The UN Secretary General called for all nations to provide further urgently needed funds, the equivalent of the total spent on cigarettes worldwide every 2 weeks, on behalf of global COVID-19 vaccine efforts to ensure that everyone, everywhere, gets protection from the virus. Take a look.
It is in every country's national and economic self-interest to work together to massively expand access to tests and treatments and to support a vaccine as a global public good, a people's vaccine, available and affordable for everyone, everywhere. The ACT Accelerator, with its COVAX facility, is the vehicle to get us there. We need to think bigger. It is time for countries to draw funding from their own response and recovery programs. By helping others, they will help themselves. Investing in the ACT Accelerator will accelerate every country's own recovery. The pandemic is costing the global economy $375 billion a month and 500 million jobs since the crisis erupted. The developed world has devoted many trillions of dollars to respond to the socio-economic impact of the crisis in their own countries. Surely we can invest a small fraction of that to stop the spread of the disease everywhere.
Fully financing the ACT Accelerator will help to control the pandemic, restore confidence, and stimulate the global recovery. Frankly, this is not a financial challenge. It's a test of solidarity. This is a moment for saying no to nationalism and yes to our shared humanity. Because ultimately, the ACT Accelerator is not delivering merely vaccines, diagnostics, and therapeutics. It's delivering something far more important, hope. Let's act now, let's act together to stop this pandemic.
Only way to eliminate the threat of this disease somewhere is to eliminate it everywhere. The solution is not shaming the rich countries that are doing the natural thing of wanting to protect their people. The solution is to vastly increase the manufacturing capacity so we can cover everyone as soon as possible.
I'm pleased to announce that I've proposed to our board to make available up to $12 billion of fast-track financing to countries for the purchase and deployment of COVID-19 vaccines once the vaccines have been approved by several highly respected, stringent regulatory agencies. This additional financing will be to low and middle income developing countries that don't have adequate access and will help them alter the course of the pandemic for their people.
This is why I'd like to thank all those who have already engaged and committed themselves, all those who are still dithering. I call upon you to get involved, to commit yourselves. It's incredibly important because such a pandemic is something that happens, fortunately, only very rarely, but it is time now for us to impress upon everyone that we can cope globally.
We have a collective responsibility to make sure that no one is left behind, which is why Canada is supporting the COVAX facility and advanced market commitment that will help ensure that vaccines are distributed quickly and fairly around the world. Because Canada's recovery depends on a global recovery.
The ACT Accelerator, led by the World Health Organization, has received around $3 billion of the $38 billion needed to meet the goal of producing and delivering 2 billion vaccine doses, 245 million treatments, and 500 million diagnostic tests over the next year. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021. through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETI. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal. New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas. What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
Impormasyong mahalaga sa taong bayan. Patas na pagbabalita. Papakinggan ang magkabilang panig. Lilinawin ang mga isyu at kaagad ihahatid ng objektibo. Mata ng agila. Dumatagit ng pinakasariwang pangyayari di lamang sa loob ng bansa, kundi sa iba't ibang panig ng daigdig. Mula sa Eagle News Teams at sa tulong ng makabagong teknolohiya, tiyak na makakalap kaagad ang katotohanan para sa matalas, malinaw at malalimang pagbabalita. Ito ang mas pinatalas na mata ng agila. Inihahatid ng veteranong broadcast journalist na si Eli Saludar kasama si Judith Liamera at pinangungunahan ng batikang mamamahayag ng bansa, Vic De Leon Lima. Mata ng Agila, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi, simula October 5, dito sa Net 25.
Anong unang gagawin mo pag umiyak? Will you,
Pag makita kita sa barangay Agila, pag makabalik ka, hindi ko alam.
Mapapatalong ka ba papunta sa akin? Tatakbo ka ba?
Grabe naman.
Layakapin mo ba kagad ako?
Ako, pagalitan pa ako ni Mommy G. Sabi niya, "Uy, ikaw ha, iring-iring ka." Iring-iring. Oo, sabi, ikaw ha?
Halimbawa,
pagalitan ako ni Mommy G. Siyempre, yakapin kita. Karding!
Gaano kahigpit?
Kaya lang, galing ka pa ng di ba? Dubai, karding!
Hindi, siyempre, nakaligo na. Ikaw naman.
Ang COVID!
Siyempre, nakaligo na ako niya. Pag pumunta ako sa'yo, mabango na ako.
Magkwaranting ka muna.
Kumanta, sumaya tayong lahat. Saya-saya.
In small tin sheds in a town outside Bangladesh capital Dhaka, wooden looms are deftly operated by a group of men and women, some of the country's last traditional weavers, as huge garment factories churn out cheaper alternatives.
যখন দেখলাম যে এখন বর্তমান লাভ বাণিজ্য তখন এটা তো শেষের পথে এখন বর্তমান তো আর সেই কাজে লাভ নেই এই অনেক ব্যবসা করে আমি না কত মাসে রিক্সা চালাল কত বিদেশ গেছে এরকম করতে
রিক্সা চালাইলে ইয়াতে না মন করেন সারা দিন আব্বালে রিক্সা চালাই 500-700 টাকা কাম করেন যায় আর আমাকে 4 দিন খারাপ লাগে তারপর 500-700 টাকা কাম করেন যায় তাহলে এই কাম করবো না রিক্সা চালাবো কোন ঠিক আছে এই যে এটা ইয়া না কলমে হিসাব করে যে কলম দিয়ে খাতা কলম দিয়ে লাভ থাকে না সরকার কোনো ফ্যাসিলিটি দেয় না কোনো লোন দেয় না কোনো এটা হুতার ট্যাক্স কমা দেয় না এই কারণে আর কি
The nation's centuries-old traditional weaving was once highly sought after, with nobility from Asia and Europe wearing the fine muslin clothing. But over the past 2 decades, Bangladesh has become one of the world's largest ready-made garment exporters, with 4,000 factories making clothes for the likes of retail giants Primark and H&M. There were 4,000 handlooms in Rohitpur and nearby villages, employing 12,000 weavers. A hand-woven lungi from Rohitpur was a prized asset, said local trader Chaudhry Abdur Rahman, recalling stories of his father and uncles buying the clothes for their weddings. Now, just 3 dozen weavers with an average age of 50 remain in Rohitpur, serving a small group of customers still willing to shell out for the softer handmade lungis or lanchais. He admits his profession is dying out. Employment in the town has shifted to almost a dozen factories manufacturing plastic, textiles, and jute that have more than 10,000 people on the payroll.
In his first official visit abroad, Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga is planning to visit Vietnam and Indonesia around mid-October. According to Kyodo News Agency, the premier is expected to hold talks with Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc and Indonesian President Joko Widodo if the trip goes as planned. The plan to visit the Association of Southeast Asian Nations members comes as Japan seeks to strengthen ties with countries in the region amid growing tensions between its main security ally, U.S., and its biggest trading partner, China. And this is over trade, security, and other issues as well. Also in the Kyodo News report, Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato reiterated that Japan seeks to promote the vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific, including the maintenance of the rule of law, freedom of navigation and overflight, and peaceful settlement of disputes by building a stable relationship with its neighbors.
Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc called for early conclusion of negotiations and signing of a free trade agreement between Vietnam and the UK during his reception for Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab on September 30. According to its government website, chinfu.vn, Prime Minister Phuc emphasized that the trade deal, once signed and implemented, would help both countries to boost economic recovery in post-COVID-19 pandemic period. He suggested the sides continue close coordination at multilateral forums, especially when Vietnam is undertaking the dual role as ASEAN 2020 chair and non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council in the tenure 2020 to 2021. For his part, Raab stressed that his visit to Vietnam is part of the UK government's efforts to strengthen cooperation with Asia-Pacific countries. He conveyed Prime Minister Boris Johnson's invitation to Phuc to pay an official visit to the UK in the time to come. Raab congratulated on Vietnam's successful containment of the COVID-19 pandemic and voiced support for the positions of Vietnam and ASEAN on the need to maintain peace, stability, security, and to settle disputes through peaceful means with respect for international law, especially the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea in the region. Bilateral trade between the two countries is 6.6 billion USD in 2019, and the UK's direct investment in Vietnam reached $3.7 billion.
In a related news, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab announced that the UK will also provide £50 million for ASEAN to combat the pandemic during his virtual meeting with ASEAN foreign ministers on COVID-19. Government website Xinfu.vn reported that the funding includes £7.5 million for ASEAN's COVID-19 response fund, the bloc's collective effort to address the pandemic. Mr. Raab reassured the UK's support for ASEAN centrality and highly valued ASEAN's achievements in community building process. He suggested ASEAN and the UK to step up cooperation in maritime security, law enforcement, and climate change. Addressing the meeting, Deputy Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh hailed the UK's proactive role in accelerating dialogue and cooperation in the region. He also asked ASEAN and the UK to collaborate in researching and manufacturing vaccines against COVID-19. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab also announced the funding package for a mixture of programs with the Asian Development Bank and ASEAN bodies. As part of the visit, Mr. Raab also opened the UK-Vietnam Health Conference with the Vietnamese Ministry of Health. The conference is bringing together sector experts from development and research organizations to discuss vaccine development and ensure equitable access of vaccines in Vietnam. Now, this comes as Oxford University's COVID-19 trial to identify effective treatments for COVID-19 patients was confirmed on Wednesday, September 30 in Vietnam as the first overseas expansion of crucial efforts to fight the disease.
With the end of the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic expected to further stimulate the mad rush to grab investments going out of China, Senator Richard J. Gordon stressed the need to expedite the international airport proposed to be built in Bulacan to make the country more attractive to investors. Gordon made the statement in his Wednesday's co-sponsorship speech for Senate Bill number 1823 under Committee Report number 128, which proposes to grant Miguel Aerocity Incorporation a franchise to construct, develop, establish, operate, and maintain a domestic and international airport in Bulacan, and to construct, develop, establish, operate, and maintain an adjacent airport city. He said the proposed construction of an international airport in central Luzon is really a game changer. Gordon said with China dislodged as the manufacturing hub with giant firms like LG, Panasonic, and Samsung, among others going to Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam, the prospect of a very major international airport with all the other airports and seaports would certainly make the Philippines attractive to the people who are now changing the paradigm.
And Canada has earmarked 1.9 million Canadian dollars, approximately 68 million pesos, to fund a peace education program in the Philippines. The Canadian Embassy in Manila announced on Thursday or today. The project, called 1001 Nights Civic and Peace Education Program, would provide training and educational support to about 100,000 children and 3,500 teachers in 100 schools across the Philippines. He added that through this project, Canada hopes that the Filipino children will develop an increased understanding of why diversity, inclusion, tolerance, non-discrimination, and empathy are smart life choices leading to greater harmony and happiness. The project would be implemented by Vancouver-based Big Bad Boo Studios Incorporated in partnership with the Department of Education and a Philippine studio in Manila. 1001 Nights, a multi-platform educational entertainment program, would feature cartoons to teach children life skills and civic values, including nonviolence, human rights, democracy, gender equality, and the rule of law. The program is based on the award-winning animated television series called 1001 Nights, which has aired as a commercial entertainment of premier television networks in over 70 countries to a global audience of over 100 million people.
Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP, Governor Benjamin Diokno underscored on Wednesday the importance for the government not to lose track of its plan to make the domestic economy bounce strongly from the pandemic. In an interview during the Laging Handa public briefing program, Diokno said the economy entered the pandemic in a position of strength with a strong growth path for the last 10 years. Diokno said the peso is among the strongest in the region, and unlike in the past crisis, the local currency remains resilient. He said government debt has gone down to about 39.6% of gross domestic product, or GDP. He added, and I quote, "The rule of thumb is if your debt is 60% of GDP and below, you're okay," unquote. The pandemic has resulted in a recession for several countries, including the Philippines, but Diokno said this is a given because the current pandemic is unprecedented. He raised the need not lose track of where we want to be for the next 2 to 3 years. Diokno said the government should maximize the current pandemic to implement structural reforms, so after the dust settles, we, the Philippines, will be a strong country with less income disparity, competitive, and safer.
Meanwhile, Fitch Solutions sees a wider budget gap for the Philippines until 2022 due to the expected rise in expenditures despite the projected drop in revenues, but said risks have declined amid the pandemic. In a report dated September 30, the unit of Fitch Group forecast the government's budget deficit to rise to 9.3% of gross domestic product, or GDP, this year, from an initial projection of 8% due to the outlook for revenue deteriorating under our revised growth outlook. The budget deficit forecast for next year is 8.3% of GDP, while 7.1% of GDP for 2022. These are wider than the earlier forecasts of 3.5% and 3% forecasts for 2021 and 2022, respectively. Fitch Solutions has revised its growth forecast for the domestic economy this year from -2% to -9.1%, after noting that a recovery in the second quarter is now unlikely, with the base case scenario of gradual resumption of economic activity by year-end. Its 2021 growth forecast has been changed from a 6.5% recovery to a 6.2% output. ASEAN in Focus will be right back after this short break.
Congratulations! Lloyd Sarausos!
Pinangako ko rin sa sarili ko na kahit anong mangyari, kahit ilang beses madapa, babangon ako para abutin ang aking pangarap.
Eric and Jenny Morandarte!
Makikita mo yung pagmamahal kapag magkasama kayong kumakanta.
As na kumakanta kami ng mula sa puso.
Purple Heart!
Here I am joining Tagi sa Nanggaling, hoping that the judges will also see the star in me.
Tatlong contenders ang magtutunggalian sa kantahan. Abangan natin kung sino kina Lloyd Sarausos, Eric and Jenny Morandarte, at Purple Heart ang unang pagpwesto sa quarter elimination.
Tagi sa Nanggaling Part 2 is co-presented by Cooper, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical, also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Cooper, your ultimate MEPS and air conditioning solutions. Unlad Incorporated International, fight against global poverty. Canrib Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Our sponsors, BDO, we find ways. JRC Industrial Sales, RS Square Variables Incorporated, your trusted UPS supplier and UPS maintenance provider in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Chris Rock Enterprises, Victory Carpentry, DOP Asiatic Pest Control Services, and AUB Aspire for the Future in partnership with New Era University ETAP, Expanded Tertiary Education, Equivalency and Accreditation Program. Embrace Cafe, we embrace differently abled persons. Sila ang mga kinikilalang bayaning may mahalagang papel para makamit ang kalayaan at pagbabago sa Pilipinas. Pero sa panahong ito, may mga bagong bayaning nakikipaglaban sa sakit na lumaganap sa buong daigdig, ang COVID-19. Ang ating mga frontliner, gaya ng healthcare workers, mga doktor, nurses, medical technologists, at iba pang health professionals, mga pulis, sundalo, security guards, mga tauhan na nangangalaga sa seguridad at mahahalagang pangangailangan ng bawat komunidad. Ang mga bagong bayani, ating pasalamatan. Kilalanin ang kanilang sakripisyo at serbisyo para sa lahat.
And we're back. Skin whitening creams, child marriage, a curtailed education, Vietnamese model and literacy campaigner Hien Nie has defied expectations laid on her and is determined to change the future for girls who grew up as she did. Let's take a look.
Ở trong buôn của em thời điểm đó là những cái người mà bắt đầu trưởng thành như em ấy, họ thường hay mua một cái loại kem mà bôi trắng mặt trắng tươi luôn á, trắng non luôn đấy. Thì mẹ em thấy là họ đẹp lên thì hiển nhiên cái suy nghĩ của mẹ em nghĩ là mẹ muốn con gái mình cũng đẹp. Xong rồi có người yêu, xong rồi kết hôn thì lúc mà mẹ đưa cho em sửa được mặt và cả kem thì em từ chối. Em gạt tay của mẹ và đi chạy xuống chơi với bạn.
Nghiệp phiên bản đó là Phương Thủy. Xong mọi người sẽ hỏi là chơi đâu là thật, đâu là phiên bản.
Hoa nói là mấy cái thanh đó được tính vào cái bộ áo giáp mang vô trình diễn với Vân. Đó là một cái điều mà em mong muốn khi mà cái bộ trang phục này nếu
Rooftop farming has gone high-tech. Space-starved Singapore is seeing a growing number of rooftop farms as part of a drive to produce more food locally and reduce a heavy reliance on imports. Let's watch this.
And Singapore being so land scarce, okay, we want to advocate that you really do not need large parcel of land to do edible farming.
All right, Ralph, thank you for joining me today and helping me out on this newscast. Thank you, Ralph. How are you doing? How is Vietnam now? How is school? I know that's back to school once again. Can you give me a picture of what
Yes,
it's like over there in Vietnam?
That's right. It's always a pleasure, Alma, joining you in this program. Well, I've been busy for the past few weeks because I've started my career as a teacher here in Hanoi. So yeah, life has been busy, and yeah, we're happy because everything is safe and we're back to normal.
How is it there? Are you still following the social distancing rules and all that?
Well, not anymore, but in schools, students, security guards are still checking the temperatures of the students before entering the class, just to follow the protocols. Yeah, but everything is back to normal. Even the karaoke bars and pubs are basically open now, so there's no more social distancing.
And how's the weather?
Well,
There's winter in Vietnam?
Well, not yet. It's mid-autumn. In fact, this afternoon, the reason why I was able to join because we're half day on school, and they're having a program right now in the school because it's mid-autumn. So it's mid-autumn festival. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ralph, for joining me today and helping me out. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. All right, so I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting. Okay, and we live in interesting times. Bye, Ralph. Thank you.
Bye.